regular session. And right now, we're going to move to our public hearing agenda. So I'd like to call our public hearing agenda to order. For verbal attendance, board members starting furthest to my left, please state your name for the record.
Vasilio Supos.
Diane Stefani.
Scott Nelson.
Jim Baumstark.
Julie Moon.
James Dolan.
Alex Kamalevich.
All right, and we are now in our public hearing for our budget, fiscal year '24.
Good evening, everyone. So on the screen right now, we've got same numbers that we showed last month, same totals, and this is a snapshot of the FY24 budget across all funds. The only change since last month is that the $11 million transfer is now coming from the Ed Fund, unfortunately, as opposed to the O&M Fund. And this has to do with both us trying to accommodate and keep at least 35% in each fund for when the delay of property taxes is expected to happen in the next couple months. And also, Ed Fund has the most fund balance, so that's what we're going to draw from in this fiscal year.
Hey, Eric, why do you say unfortunately? Does it really matter? Or like that it's coming from the Ed Fund versus O&M?
Well, I say unfortunately because Scott gave me a note that said, hey, if we're making a transfer, hopefully we can avoid the Ed Fund. And unfortunately, we can't avoid the Ed Fund transfer from fund balance, yeah. It'd be nice if we had multiple funds to draw from and play to, but we're getting to the point where when we line up the funds and the additional money we need for construction, and we're trying to balance this delay in property taxes, we're in a position where we're starting to dance a little bit, that's all.
And a lot of that is the delay in property taxes.
It is. This is a snapshot of all funds, revenues on the top, expenses on the bottom. Across all funds, we're showing $112 million in revenues and $128.6 million in expenses, resulting in this $27 million deficit that is purposeful, intentional. This has to do with us spending dollars on construction after having issued debt for the last couple of years to fund this program. And looking at just the operating funds, we see revenues at almost $91 million and expenses at $99.6, resulting in an $8.7 million deficit, which is mainly attributed to this $11 million transfer. And then just a projection of our operating fund balance. If all these assumptions in this budget played out, here's what our fund balance would look like at the end of FY24. And that's all we have.
Are there any comments or questions?
I have a question. So I was looking at the last drawdown projective that I saw, which had been last January. And for these 3 years, we had 14.5, 13.5, and 15.5. So what's the reason for the $3.5 million delta between the 14.5 we looked at last year and 11?
I think that was our best thinking at that time.
Yeah. So it's how stuff came in, cost-wise, or projection?
Or how it's anticipated to come in. I mean, we won't know for sure for another couple months when we bring final bids to the board to make those last decisions. Then we'll have a great idea. Up until that point, it's guessing on what the Springman project's going to cost, how much we're over, things like that.
Could some of that have also been because we extended the construction time frame?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Our thinking was constantly evolving.
So the comment I'll make, and obviously we're about to go through a CFAC cycle, so we'll get a sharper pencil on this by the time that reports out. That projection, the one that CFAC did last year, showed over this drawdown period us running surpluses, not deficits, which blunted the impact somewhat to the operating fund balance. We're seeing an actual deficit this year based on your response, so that's a turnaround. And if the trend holds the same as it did in the CFAC presentation, you would expect to see further deficits. So we would go from possibly staying above 30% to definitely going below 30%, even with an 11 this year versus 14 and a half. So we'll just need to, as a board, pay special attention to that analysis when it comes around.
And do you remember, was that first drawdown that we did in CFAC coming from FY '24?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it matched up. Yeah, it showed about a 2 million surplus for '24, whereas you have, what, at 1 point something deficit for '24 right now?
It's a little surplus, right?
2.3.
Surplus.
Surplus.
Without the 11.
That's why the deficit's only 8.9 instead of 11.
So this showed 24 was a 2.4 surplus, 25 was 2, 26 was 1.1. Okay.
So that part sounds consistent, it's just we're only taking 11 instead of some slightly
14.
higher amount that
Yeah,
was in
these
some
are
earlier
always
projections.
guesses.
Yeah.
These are always guesses. You know, we're budgeting for a guess, could be higher, could be lower. What I'm managing now, I think, is something different than what we were talking about before, which is trying to maintain at least 35% in each fund. And that's where it's a little different. We don't typically talk about each fund. We just talk in whole, because that's how we're evaluated on our financial profile and things like that. But now we're dealing with, trying to work with the counties.
Do you think by our next meeting we'll have clarity on when property taxes will be paid?
I think, maybe.
Maybe. Thanks. Any other comments?
Maybe.
What's a month from,
Yeah.
it's basically a
Right.
month from now? I mean, yeah, the answer is maybe.
Maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments during our public hearing for the FY '24 budget? No? All right, this is now our opportunity for audience comments in this public hearing relating to our FY '24 budget. Please keep your comments for this opportunity related to the FY '24 budget. There will be 2 additional comment sections in a regular meeting. Anyone wishing to address the board can submit a comment card and give it to the Executive Director of Communications and Strategic Planning. The Executive Director will call community members who submit cards forward, and they will be asked to introduce themselves and describe their relationship with the district. Please keep your comments at 3 minutes or less. And know that the board will be taking notes, but we will be in a listening mode only, and an appropriate response will be given in a timely manner. We ask that you submit 1 comment per opportunity. Kathy, do we have any comments on the FY '24 budget? All right. We'll now adjourn and return to our regular meeting. Welcome to our regular meeting. We're moving along to our next section, the approval section. I'd like to ask for a motion and a second to approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Now I'd like to ask for a motion and a second to approve the regular and executive session minutes.
So moved. Dolan.
Second.
Katie, can I have a roll call?
Yes. Stefani? Tom Stark?
Aye.
Dolan?
Aye.
Kimmelevitz?
Aye.
Moon?
Aye.
Nelson?
Aye.
Supert?
All right, motion carries. We're now at our superintendent comments.
Thank you. I don't have separate comments. I'll talk a little bit about our intergovernmental agreement shortly.
All right, great. Now we are at our audience comments section. Kathy, do we have any audience comments? All right, so anyone wishing to address the board can submit a comment card and give it to the Executive Director of Communications and Strategic Planning. The Executive Director will call committee members who submit cards forward. They will be asked to introduce themselves and describe their relationship with the district. Please keep your comments at 3 minutes or less. And know that the board will be taking notes, but will be in a listening mode only. And an appropriate response will be given in a timely manner. We ask that you submit 1 comment per opportunity. We will have another opportunity. Kathy?
First of all, thank you for letting me have this opportunity. So just one comment, because I do have two, but I'll keep it to one for this opportunity. I guess I'm going to go with my second comment first, which has me most livid regarding the district's policy. I would like someone to explain to me why I and other parents cannot have access to a voluntary list of parent contact information. School friendships need to extend beyond the school walls and school hours. I believe each class should have, at the beginning of each school year, a way for parents to add their cell phone information, emails, to a voluntary list for that class so that parents can connect up and offer play dates, birthday parties, getting together beyond school time. I keep getting, since kindergarten, told that this is confidential information. I've told at the PTA meeting that this is something that parents cannot access. I would like to know the statute or regulation that falls under this, why this is the case. If a parent chooses not to participate in the class voluntary list of contact information for setting up play dates with their cell phone and email information, they should have the option to do that. But parents that wish to have their contact information made available to other parents in that classroom so that the children can have friends, play dates, birthday parties, or whatever beyond the school time should be having the opportunity to do so. Since I have a son at Hoffman in 4th grade, and he has had zero play dates because I have no way of contacting any of his friends. So he has never had one of his class friends since kindergarten at any birthday party, a play date. He has zero contact information. None. And he's come home literally in tears because he has no one to play with beyond school time, and he doesn't understand why. And he is in the higher spectrum of autism, so he's not able to say, please have your parent give me the information and my dad would contact you or whatever. So I don't understand why this is considered confidential. These are not nuclear secrets. This is not, in my opinion, does not fall under HIPAA. So I would like to have someone to explain that to me. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Claire Gansberg, and I understand Annette Ross Meredith would like to speak somewhat.
Hello. My name is Claire Bonsberg, and I am an 8th grade language arts teacher here at ATIA. I also serve as vice president of the GEA. My comments this evening are not on behalf of the union, but represent my own perspective alongside that of Casey Coker, fellow D34 educator and equity advocate. We want to begin by thanking Mr. Baumstark for bringing the research about negative outcomes of SRO placement in schools into the conversation last month and expanding on his comment with further evidence. A Center for Public Integrity analysis of U.S. Department of Education data from all 50 states, plus the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico, found that school policing disproportionately affects students with disabilities, Black, Native American, and Latino children. Another recent study found the presence of SROs in middle schools decreased serious violence, but they also increased out-of-school suspensions, transfers, expulsions, and police referrals. The increase in suspensions was especially acute for Hispanic and Black students. Criminalization of misbehavior can inhibit future education, employment, and housing opportunities, feeding the school-to-prison pipeline. As facilitators of EDI-centric professional development for teachers and school leaders in our district, we believe that all educators would benefit from contextualized learning around the school-to-prison pipeline. A clear understanding of when responses to student behaviors cross over from supports provided within our school behavior matrices to actual legal consequences should precede the decision to finalize an SRO contract. We find the presence of an armed officer in our schools counter to the inclusivity work we're prioritizing this year, particularly looking ahead to inclusive behavior intervention practices as an upcoming topic of teacher PD. In our ongoing SIP work towards the SEL goal of fostering a sense of belonging, we must acknowledge that the presence of an armed individual in our learning environment makes us feel less safe, and that other educators and students might feel similarly. Regardless of the intent of this initiative, SRO placement has the impact of policing schools and criminalizing student behavior. We are proud of the significant progress our district has made in fostering more equitable and inclusive learning environments. We've come a long way towards that vision in the 11 years since SROs were last placed in our schools. Past practice doesn't necessarily equate positive outcomes, particularly given the extent to which the landscape of public education and our definition of safe schools has since evolved.
Good evening. I'm Minette, can you hear me? I'm Minette Ross Meredith, and I am the president of the Glenview Education Association and a math interventionist at Pleasant Ridge School. I am here speaking on behalf of Casey Coker. At ATIA, we have just initiated a partnership with North Cook student advocates who are directly mentoring our students with Tier 2 and Tier 3 behavior needs throughout the day and strengthening our relationships with their families. It will prove challenging to assess the impact of ALOP implementation and its philosophy of positive reinforcement when it's rolled out in tandem with our SRO assignment. Last month's board meeting presentation noted that the SROs will collaborate with mental health staff and community resources. We'd appreciate a clearer understanding of what these partnerships will look like in practice, both within our schools and the larger Glenview community. As educators of the students whom this initiative is intended to protect, we would respectfully request 2 steps be taken by district leadership following implementation. 1, we'd like for SRO student interactions to be tracked by race and ethnicity. 2, we'd like a clear progress monitoring framework to be outlined in order to measure the effectiveness and impact of their presence in our schools. We hope that you continue to explore alternative systems of support, such as additional social workers, counselors, and student advocates. Professionally trained educators that nurture the mental health and well-being of our students are better equipped to promote their inclusion in our learning environments. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Kathy, do we have any more comments? All right, we will have another comment period later. Next, we move along to our consideration of resolutions on our consent agenda. We have the 23064 personnel report. We have the 23065 payroll warrants. We have the 23066 vendor warrants, 23067 health and dental renewal rates for 2024, and the 23068 press issue 112 for action. Can I have a motion and a second for approval?
So moved. Baumstark.
Kitty, may I have a roll call?
Baumstark,
Aye.
Dolan,
Aye.
Kamalevich. Aye. Moon.
Aye.
Nelson.
Aye.
Sopas.
Aye.
Stefani.
Motion carries. Now we have our consideration of other resolutions. We have the 23069 adoption of 2024 budget. Eric? Do you have anybody want any questions? We just had a public hearing on this. All right. Can I have a motion and a second to accept the recommendation to approve the budget as presented?
Second, Dolan.
Katie, may I have a roll call?
Stefani. Aye. Baumstark,
Aye.
Dolan,
Aye.
Kamalevich. Aye. Moon. Aye. Nelson.
Aye.
Sopas.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, we have the 23070 SRO IGA, Student Resource Officer Intergovernmental Agreement. Dr. Deli?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I have just a few comments to make on this subject. For your consideration this evening, as you can see, it's an attached document as an intergovernmental agreement between District 34 and the Village of Glenview for both reschool officer services as well as reciprocal reporting arrangements or associated responsibilities. This topic has been discussed both publicly and in closed session for several months and reestablishes a school resource officer model at each of our 2 middle schools. This intergovernmental agreement outlines in 24 pages, among other things, I'm just going to highlight a few things. Everyone's free to review the document. The roles and responsibilities and authority of both the schools and the police department. Confidentiality of student records, access to camera footage, SRO training requirements, SRO work schedule, shared costs associated with this model, termination conditions of both the agreement and of individual resource officers should that need ever arise, and the duration of the contract. This is a 1-year agreement. We're reestablishing this model. We will monitor its effectiveness. We will do that both qualitatively and quantitatively. A few points in general that I'd like to just reiterate. This is from previous presentations, but hopefully a good reminder. The SRO model is not new to District 34. We had a program that was discontinued in 2012, in part due to some financial constraints that the district was having at that time. There were other reductions that were made. That was one of them. The primary goal of the SRO will be to become an everyday partner with the school, being a part of the school family. Allowing one officer to be assigned full-time to each of the 2 middle schools will help build positive relationships with students, staff, family, and community, all in the name of proactive safety and security for all of the inhabitants of the building. Both middle schools have seen substantial increases in the frequency of 911 calls, in part due to an increase in both drug and alcohol possession, distribution, and use, in addition to cyberbullying and other physical behaviors. The school administration has interviewed and selected the SROs, and the SROs have received all of the required training by the state of Illinois. The agreement also allows for the termination if the district determines that the arrangement is not meeting the needs of the schools. I would like to thank the village trustees and staff and leadership from the Glenview Police Department for helping forge this comprehensive and mutually beneficial relationship. The village plans to act on this agreement tomorrow evening at their regularly scheduled meeting as well, and the SROs would begin officially immediately thereafter. Thank you.
Thank you. Do anybody have any comments or questions? Diane?
I guess I just wanted to say, hopefully everyone can hear me. I just wanted to say that this is not something, thank you, that the board has taken lightly by any stretch of the imagination. And I think that we're acutely aware of the fact that this can have positive and negative consequences, but we, at this point, we're aware of a lot of positives. It's something that is being recommended, and it's as this plan goes forward, if there are weaknesses that we see, I would hope that we can work together to make sure that this relationship can be improved. The last thing we want to see, to the concern that was raised about certain student groups being disadvantaged, that's the last thing we want to see. We want to see that all student groups have some benefit from this partnership, as Dane has put it. The hope would be that as we go forward, that the students and the staff find the student resource officer to be a partner with them to make sure that our schools are a safe place to learn.
Thank you. Anyone else? Jim?
I have a couple things, just some comments and my thoughts on this. So like most ideas in the world, whether it's good or bad often depends on implementation and not the idea itself. And so I do plan to support this agreement. I'm just going to talk about why. First, I think this agreement has put a lot of thought and care into maximizing the chance of a successful implementation. And in some ways that it does that is it does have very well articulated goals that are outlined in Exhibit A that go beyond just law enforcement objectives, which I believe is really important in a successful SRO implementation. If this is just about putting a law enforcement officer closer to do law enforcement duties, I will think it's a failed attempt at the implementation. There's duties that have been thoughtfully constructed related to each goal. Dr. Deli mentioned there's a lot of, the agreement's very sensitive to how information gets shared and privacy, which I think is important. The qualifications of the SROs themselves, there's an extensive list there that I think is important, and it goes beyond just experience and training. It includes behavioral factors, which I think are going to be really important. And then lastly, it's an agreement structure that contemplates refinement and modification as we learn more about what works best. So that's an important part of a successful implementation as well. This is not, and so some other reasons I'm supporting this is that I think it's a reasonable and fair cost too. This is not a large expenditure on the district's part. So like, that's obviously needs to be a factor in any decision we make is what does it cost. Diane mentioned the idea that there's costs and benefits, and it's always going to be pluses and minuses, but I guess my collective belief is that the benefits are going to outweigh the costs in the aggregate, and that's why I'm not certain about that, but I feel confident that that's got a good chance of happening. I think we can navigate and manage and largely avoid some of the negative outcomes that are commonly quoted in the research literature. You know, we do have we have a lot of mental health resources, for example. I think the criminalizing non-criminal behavior is something that's on our radar screen to make sure to try and avoid. And I certainly agree with the idea of needing to track info on interactions, but it'll be also important to compare that to the interactions that have already been occurring, right? We just want to see, is it the same, different, or better? And lastly, like some decisions I see as all or nothing and some are more incremental. Like an example of an all or nothing decision would be like high diving straight into a pool. Pretty hard to adjust and reverse course once you've decided to do that. An incremental approach would be like entering the water from the zero depth end and walking in. And I guess this decision here to me feels like it's a little more incremental. The financial cost, again, is a reasonable entry point. The decision outcomes are not going to be all or nothing. We'll have time to reasonably evaluate how it's working. It's not like suddenly things are going to be way different in the first couple weeks. And I believe that what we decide can largely be reversed to return to the original state if we decide, with limited impact, if we decide that it's not working for us. So,
Thanks for your comments, Jim. Anyone else have anything they'd like to add? Dr. Dolan?
I would just say that, while I don't look forward to reading 24-page legal documents, this one's pretty clear and well-written, and I think it tells, to the points that Diane has reinforced, Jim and fellow board members have expressed in multiple settings over the last couple months, both the intention and the expectation, such that we can modify this in a way that best meets the needs of our community. And with that, I think that's the flexibility there, to Jim's point, it is not a mid-flight change. It's a, let's go to where we're comfortable and make sure that we are comfortable and not just one side of the party, but really the community. And so for that, I think it's really a step forward to say, how do we do better than perhaps some of the stories and what the research suggested, to be a new example of what this would represent.
Thank you. Alex?
Yeah, I'll echo some of this. When this first came up, I approached it with a lot of skepticism, as the other board members will recall. From the outset, I struggled to understand the value proposition. Some of the better known ones, such as an SRO provides deterrence or mitigation to mass shooting events, for instance, that simply aren't borne out by the data. But I think in an example of the way that this district works, collaboratively, we dug deeper into it, and a value proposition did certainly emerge here. As Dr. Deli noted, we've seen an uptick, a sustained trend and uptick in incidents that require either an immediate or eventual police engagement. And, it's a trend. It's not going away. It could be due to a number of factors, but it's real. Furthermore, it's clear that we have members of staff spending time, dealing with these incidents, preparing investigation to follow up on these incidents, specific work that would be best performed by an SRO. One of my initial concerns was, if we're going to spend money on this, why don't we just spend money on more social workers or more psychologists? How is the work different? Well, the work is clearly different, and there's a fit-for-purpose need here for a police officer that's embedded in the school to do that actual work. So that, and plus I'll echo the comments. This is a really well thought out and well written intergovernmental agreement. It provides a lot of guardrails, a lot of check-ins to ensure that this is progressing the way it should be. A lot of those stories about how this goes off the rails are certainly from districts where it's put in and hope for the best, and everybody gets busy with something else and things get out of hand. This is not that type of agreement. This is not that type of engagement I've seen from the administration, and clearly everyone is approaching this with the right thinking in mind and a lot of thoughtfulness. So I just wanted to share that in terms of my journey as someone who started off very skeptical with a ton of concerns, not least of which, the financial usefulness of this. But again, there's work here that is best done by this resource at a bare minimum, and that probably alone justifies it. And then everything else additional on that is very, very good as well. So,
Thank you, Alex. Vasilios, are you good?
Yeah.
Okay. I just like to say that I've appreciated the deliberation and the time we've taken to get to this point, to have an agreement that has, I think, outlined a lot of our discussion. And we are going to be diligent moving forward as a board to make sure the administration is keeping the promises that are written in the document and as we go forward. With that being said, can I ask for a motion and a second to accept the recommendation for a Student Resource Officer intergovernmental agreement as presented?
So moved. Baumstark.
Second, Dolan.
Katie, may I have a roll call vote?
Stefani?
Aye.
Baumstark?
Aye.
Dolan?
Aye.
Kimmalevich? Aye. Moon? Aye. Nelson?
Aye.
Supos?
Motion carries. Next, we have the 23071 Superintendent Contract. Is there any questions or comments? May I have a motion and a second to accept the recommendation to approve Dr. Deli's Superintendent Contract as presented?
Second, Stefani.
Katie, may I have a roll call?
Supos?
Aye.
Stefani?
Aye.
Baumstark?
Aye.
Dolan?
Aye.
Kimmalevich? Aye. Moon? Aye. Nelson?
Aye. Motion carries. At least 4 more years, Dan.
Thank you for that.
Next, we'll move along to discussion, which we're going to put off to our next meeting. It's our construction update.
Yeah, we'd like to put something together that's a little more comprehensive than we first thought. I can tell you quickly that the plan to remove the temporary air conditioning units from some of the classrooms across the district with the permanent unit ventilators has gone according to plan. So we are coming up on the tail end of that. I think Henking will be the last school over the next week or two, and probably by then won't need the temporary air conditioning anyway, but you never know. And so, we're pleased at the progress that has made. We're sorry that we had to have temporary units in the first place, but that was beyond our control. But so we're on good pace with that, and we'll have a more elaborate summary of all the work that happened in the summer, work that remains, punch list items, and things like that when we next meet.
All right, good. Can't wait. Next, we have audience comments. Kathy, do we have any audience comments? It's can I read the document? Anyone wishing to address the board can submit a comment card and give it to the Executive Director of Communications and Strategic Planning. The Executive Director will call community members who submit cards forward. They will be asked to introduce themselves and describe the relationship with the district. Please keep your comments at 3 minutes or less, and know the board will be taking notes, but will be in a listening mode only. An appropriate response will be given in a timely manner. Thank you. Mr. Tarkowski.
Yes, thank you. I am a dad of a Hoffman fourth grader. And this is just regarding to kind of a general comment regarding curriculum, because he's asked me, and I'd just like to have someone explain to me why the district does not begin teaching what I found out is global language beginning at in K through 5, when it's when the children's brains are most spongeable and able to pick up a second language. Why are we waiting until 7th grade to start teaching a global language for our monolingual students? It's our youngest learners who can pick up a foreign language the easiest. I know that they're in 4th grade, they're studying band, and one of the reasons that they're doing band and orchestra is the principal in the district has said that it's got many beneficial aspects to that. I believe that beginning a global language program curriculum, beginning in K through 5, also has very real-world impact, positive impact for our students. I think that it should not wait for students to be picking it up as an elective. When I was going to school, it's only elective when you're in high school, which is way too late to learn a second language. So I would like someone to give that some consideration for future students. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Kathy, do we have any more comments? Next, we'll move to reports. We have the FOIA report, the number 2 True North Board meeting report, the number 3 construction change order report, the number 4 referendum expense report, the number 5 board self-evaluation recap, the number 6 ESSER update, and the number 7 following meeting agenda. Are there any thoughts on the reports? Are there any questions? All right. Is there any other business? All right, we'll move to our adjournment. I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for coming.